We are starting off with a really important subject this afternoon, which is the subject of climate justice. Climate justice. It's about hope, resilience, and the fight for a sustainable future that's inclusive, that's for all, right? So, to that end, we're going to bring three speakers up on stage. We're going to have Wendy Oliver from the VoLo Foundation. She is the program director. We're bringing up Andi Allen, the state director for Best Buddies. And Daniel Gibson, Allegany Franciscan Ministries regional vice president for Miami-Dade. Welcome to all three of you.
Hi, and welcome. This is a group of friends that's going to be talking, and one of the things that we all believe in here is inclusion, and that's why I have my shirt that says, "Inclusion lives here." So I want to start off by pointing out that economically, people don't realize that we as taxpayers are already paying thousands a year now for climate damage, so it's really not economically efficient to ignore the problem and then pay more later. This is also a huge humanitarian issue. The Vogels care deeply about the humanitarian side, and I'm so honored to be able to work with them to work on not only climate action, but health, education, humanitarian efforts that are very important and near to their heart. The quality of life for future generations is often something that you'll hear Thais Lopez-Vogel, our trustee, talk about. She talks about 1 in 10 kids suffer from asthma, and she says it's a national security threat. Have you guys heard her say those things? I've learned so much from her. So there's a social justice issue included, and lower income families are going to be most affected, and generally they're the ones causing the least amount of the problem. I have two experts here today on this issue. I'm going to come over and talk to them and bring them into the conversation. As you know, we have Daniel from Franciscan Allegany Ministries. I think I said it wrong again. It's Allegany with that hard G. And then Andi Allen, who is the state director for Best Buddies in Florida. I want to hear a little bit more about your organizations and the work that you're doing. So I'm going to start with you, Daniel. I did do a little researching. The Franciscan Sisters of Allegany, a community of vowed women religious, was founded in 1859. And in my research for this panel, I found this amazing quote. Let's see. It says, "Live with all creation by joyfully serving others, especially those who are poor or marginalized." Can you tell us more about your organization and what you all do?
Sure. We, for lack of a better word, we are a health conversion foundation. We owned a bunch of hospitals throughout the state of Florida and sold our assets in the 90s, and now give out grants in the different communities where our hospitals were established. So we have Miami-Dade, the Palm Beaches, 3 counties in the Palm Beach region, and 2 counties in the Tampa Bay region. And as you said, we were founded by a group of Franciscan nuns who came down in the 20s to fight education and saw a great disparity of health needs. And from the very founding of our days, when we were just a ministry before we were a foundation, justice has been at the core of what we've fought for.
So when we were doing this planning session, I had created a PowerPoint, a bunch of slides, with data about sea level rise and how that's impacting, and the hurricanes and how they're displacing people from homes. And we started talking, and actually our panelists have some really interesting stories right on their own. So we decided to scrap the PowerPoint, and Daniel told us, well, actually they both told me some amazing stories that really got me thinking. But Daniel, you told Andi and I a story about these nuns, and boy, they were pretty cool. Can you tell us that story in the time of segregation, what these nuns did?
Yeah, I'll try to be fast. And I'm not Catholic. I was not raised Catholic, but I have learned quite a bit about the Catholic Church in the last 7 years, and I've learned that the sisters are where it's at. If we could just let the sisters control the Catholic Church, I think we could really have some miraculous things going. And as I shared, from the time that they came down, equity and justice was something that was at the corner stone of what they believed in, so much so that there's a story in Palm Beach County where we operated the St. Mary's Hospital, and there was another black hospital down the street that had none of the goods, none of the resources, none of the medications in order to treat the African Americans in the hospitals, and this is in the 30s, 40s. And the sisters were known at midnight. We kind of talk about them sneaking through the city of Palm Beach County and actually delivering goods from St. Mary's to the black hospital in order to bring resources to that hospital. And that's just one example of how we have always looked at how we can improve access to the most vulnerable people in our community.
And the work that, yeah, that's an amazing story. So you said you're a dissolved hospital, so you have these funds. How much do you give? Who gets these dollars?
Sure. We have it's a medium-sized foundation. We have about 120 million in assets, so we give about 6% out, about 6 to 8 million, depending on the year, is what we give out. And it has always traditionally been around health, but 8 years ago, we started to really look at the social determinants of health, start working in communities of color, and had done something called the Common Good Initiative that really looked at building power within communities and allowing communities to identify their own solutions to the issues that were impacting their lives. And as that 8-year initiative is coming to an end, we have started to look at climate. And we'll talk more about that. And so climate is sort of the next venture for what we'll be focusing on.
And I was reading that the Pope came out with the Laudato Si.
Yes.
And that's actually the let's say the most comprehensive Vatican document to date on environmentalism, ethics, and caring for nature and each other. So how has this Laudato Si changed the conversation?
Sure. About 2 years ago, we started to think, what are we going to do after the Common Good Initiative? And a lot of things rose to the top, but climate change was at the very top. And I was actually surprised by that until I discovered this Laudato Si. And I think it's important to say, we are a Catholic organization, and yet we don't use religion to dictate how we give funds. But this is a time in history where the Catholic Church, the Pope Francis, has come down and made some very, very strong comments about consumerism, about irresponsible development, and also environmentalism, and saying that if we don't act today, we won't have a tomorrow. And so it's a perfect opportunity where our Catholic sensibilities, along with our social justice community sensibilities, have come, and we think it's a perfect time for us to step into this area.
Great. Well, I want to turn it to Andi and Best Buddies. And Andi, can you tell us about your organization? What do you all do?
Absolutely. So Best Buddies is a global volunteer movement founded in 1989 by Anthony Kennedy Shriver, who came from a long line of supporting and advocating for persons with disabilities. Our goal is to enhance the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and we do that through our 4 core mission pillars, which are one-to-one friendships, leadership development, inclusive employment, and inclusive living opportunities. At the core of what we do, Anthony, when he founded us in 1989, he was a student at Georgetown. And one thing that he saw was that there were just simply not enough inclusive spaces for persons with disabilities. And 34 years later, we are slowly but surely changing that narrative.
Did he have a sister with disabilities?
He has an aunt. Her name is Rosemary, and his mom, Eunice Kennedy, this was her sister. And so back when Rosemary was growing up, people did not understand IDD, which is acronym for intellectual and developmental disabilities. They did not understand it. And so the way in which they treated her left her permanently impaired. And Eunice Kennedy stepped up and said, I never want to see a person with a disability treated in that way ever again. And from there formed Special Olympics, which started in her backyard, and her children were then inspired to continue her advocacy work.
So when I got to know Best Buddies was going into a law firm of a Best Buddy that had aged out of the school system program. He had been sitting at home, sad, was not able to participate in life or pay taxes or be part of society, really. And through Best Buddies, he was able to get a job at a very prestigious law firm and go in every day. And Best Buddies helped him be able to get that track from, getting on the bus to get to work, to getting there and figuring out what he could do to make a difference in that office. So he was, putting the Keurig coffee in, and then the Best Buddy representative said, what can you do more? What can you do? And I'm thinking, what could he do? What could he, how could he? And they said, you know what, he's going to learn the names of all the lawyers that work in this office. And it was just powerful to see. And then even later I found out that he was supporting his whole family. I had no idea. He had a sister that had a baby, and he was helping her buy diapers and on this job. So he was really able to change his life and his family's life tremendously. There's a lot of celebrities that are involved in Best Buddies. And I know that with VoLo Foundation, we've just actually put out a report. Carlos, our PR team, is put together who are the celebrities that are talking about it. They're helping raise awareness. That's just one of the ways to get a lot of people to engage in this topic. So Best Buddies, I was looking it up. Oh my gosh, there's a whole list. It's Cindy Crawford, and Tom Brady has a kickoff. He even has a license plate, a Best Buddy license plate. There's Carl Lewis. I mean, the list goes on and on. But really, the best ambassadors for Best Buddies are the Best Buddies themselves. How do you choose them? What is their role? How do you get them talking about this? This is kind of what we need to know how to do for climate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are right. The story that you shared is one of many. Every day I go to work and I'm so extremely proud of our participants who step up and they advocate for themselves, what they believe in, the issues that matter to them in their community. And all it took was for someone to step in and unlock that potential, which is what Best Buddies is doing. So I'm so extremely proud to watch them grow, to go from nonverbal to verbal, to go from unemployed to employed, to go from staying at home and mom and dad are your only friends to having so many friends, there's not enough days in the week. So, what we're doing at Best Buddies is really unlocking that potential and giving individuals with disabilities an opportunity at a quality of life no different than you and I. And our supporters, whether they're celebrities or they're everyday volunteers that give their time and their energy to serve in a mentorship capacity or open the doors to employment, every single person that's a part of this movement matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've never seen somebody be so excited to work. When I went through, there was a whole prestigious group of people walking through, and this guy, Harold, that was working in this law firm, all he could focus on was, I gotta wipe this table, there's a little drop of water on there, I gotta wipe it, and here's, I'm here with the mayor and the superintendent, So they're super excited to come to work every day. You've never seen anybody with the biggest smile on their face to be at work. So VoLo Foundation trustees have supported Best Buddies. I'm so thankful that we, get to continue our partnership. And we've started in 2022, we started a program in Florida that collaborates with the Environment Education Initiative, and it targets adults with disabilities. Tell us a bit about this partnership.
Absolutely. So first of all, on paper, it's like, wait a minute, how does Best Buddies and VoLo Foundation align? Well, guess what? We do. And the reason why we align is because we are creating leaders and advocates, both with and without disabilities, through our inclusion program, starting at the school level, moving into college, and then, of course, for adults with disabilities. Well, people with disabilities, they have the right to be educated and understand what climate correction means to them in their communities, and to be able to speak on it, to be a part of that change. And so we're so grateful that our trustees of VoLo Foundation saw the importance in that. And so as partners, we've been able to educate 57 individuals throughout the state of Florida about climate matters. We've been able to host a series of webinar and in-person activations to expose them to something as simple as recycling to something as big as advocating for a cleaner environment within their place of employment. So it's been very rewarding, but I have to say being at this conference has really made all the difference in the world in terms of what's next for our partnership and what it can look like. Just so many amazing individuals that are already in the schools and already exposing students to climate initiatives and what we can do to partner and work together. I'm so excited. I have everyone's number. I promise you I will be stalking you on Monday.
So what can we all do in the room? We're all advocates. We're all passionate about climate. And so what can others do to advocate on behalf of disability inclusion as it relates to climate matters?
Absolutely. So I think it's important to first address why does climate correction matter to persons with disabilities? Well, they represent 1 billion people worldwide. Why wouldn't they? Why would we leave them out of the conversation, right? Why would we not give them a seat at the table? Why would we not lean into their expertise when we're creating plans and we're addressing how in the world we're gonna fix this problem that we're currently tasked with, right? So it's extremely important for us to be inclusive in that way and make sure that what you're doing, what you all are doing is very, very important work. Go ahead and just open the door and invite someone in with that disability lens to be a part of the conversation and a part of the solution. And that's what you can do to make sure that persons with disability, they have access and they have opportunities to use their voices, but to also not fall victim during times of disaster.
Thank you for that. And Daniel, you and I recently, well actually Daniel invited me to co-present with him at the Florida Philanthropic Network, where we were able to talk to Florida funders. And in our review of that, we looked at that only 2% of philanthropy is going to climate. Why is that an issue?
Why is it an issue? Because it's one of the biggest issues facing our world today, and we need to be investing in solutions. It was interesting. So first of all, you introduced me as an expert, and I'm not. This is very much a new venture for me, and it's been 2 years that I've been researching what climate change is and putting that equity lens to climate. And I came across VoLo, and I'm just blown away by what you all do, first of all. And what has become very clear to me, we are a traditional health funder in the community, and we don't see ourselves changing from that. Yet, we can put a climate lens over our organization and look at health indicators in our community connected to climate. And what became very clear to me is that this exercise that we've been doing for 2 years now is an exercise that every foundation should be doing, every community-based organization should be doing. This is not something that VoLo needs to take care of. And I think, and when we went to that foundation conference, there were a lot of foundations who didn't want to come to our session. And so, as you know, I went out and I had swag. I was like, we're gonna have swag, we're gonna have fun, and I'm gonna help you walk away with one connection to your mission to the issue of climate. And I will say, actually, just today, there was a foundation, I won't say who, but there was a foundation who was extremely resistant to being there. And the director just emailed me today and said, thank you again so much for making me go there. And by the way, we have a new initiative that we're interested in, and we want to look at maybe doing HVAC training for communities of color and looking at ways to make those green options and then putting those in substandard housing without ACs, making sure that every housing in the state of Florida has AC. And that was from a 90-minute session talking to someone who entered the room saying, this is not my issue. And now they're looking at ways that they can use their resources to do it. And I think that it's our responsibility to model that.
Yeah, I remember you brought her in, and she sat in the back, and she was typing on her computer, and then all of a sudden she started to look up, and then she started to engage in the conversation, and some good things happened out of that. So I've had several meetings, and even connected some people in the room with people that attended our session, kind of unwillingly, that we dragged into that session. So we need to keep, getting that voice out there, and so that other funders will join this very important initiative.
And we need to know how to hold people accountable, right? If we're going to get into housing, we need to make sure that our housings are built green. We need to make sure that we hold people accountable to that.
Correct.
And if we're going to create businesses, why not create green businesses? And why not put people of color in leadership positions where they're not just aware of it through education, but they're actually the solution? Just like the gentleman you talked about at Best Buddies, who is supporting his family. Our communities of color can help take this to the next level and actually make money doing it. Why should they not?
It's opportunity, and that brings us to some of the things I want to talk about of some of the initiatives, and I'll stick with you for a minute with this next question. So we just celebrated Black History Month in February. The first official Black History Month in the U.S. was initiated by President Ford in a proclamation in 1976, where he encouraged Americans to review with admiration the impressive contributions of Black Americans to our national life and culture. So then we fast forward to 1994, where Clinton issued an executive order on federal actions to address environmental justice in minority populations and low-income populations, which for the first time advanced environmental justice at the federal level. So we're fortunate to have these platforms and actions that we can build on today, and they give us a strong foundation. So I'm wondering, how does your organization, how does it impact you personally, but also how does your organization address environmental justice in minority populations and low-income populations?
Well, first of all, I live in Miami, and every day I have to let people know that I ain't Latino, I am Black. So first of all, that's how it impacts me. But besides being a Black man, I think one thing that we've learned is, and I would say when I started this job, I was an advocate, and I've always been a very strong advocate, and I've always prided myself on that. I didn't really understand what organizing was. And I now like to think of myself as an organizer, because advocacy is speaking on behalf of another group. Organizing is helping those groups speak for themselves. And I think what I am seeing with this community, with the Black community in particular, and the BIPOC and the poor community, I feel like we need to trust that people are smart enough to understand this, and they're also capable of advocating for themselves once they understand that connection, and they can be part of the solutions in doing that. And so that's what I think. I think that we need to stop placating to people of color and thinking that we need to help them, and I think we need to step aside and allow them to help themselves.
Thank you for that. So Andy, I'm going to bring it back to you, and I'm going to say in January of this year marked the second anniversary of Biden signing the executive order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad, which launched our whole of government approach to environmental justice. And over the past 2 years, the environmental justice agenda includes Justice 40 initiatives. Yoka from Clio and I were on a roundtable with the White House where we could see that the federal agencies are already hard at work implementing J40, and that ensures the overall benefits of federal investments, clean jobs, work opportunities for people, and other programs. They're able to reach communities that are overburdened by pollution and have experienced underinvestment, which actually reminds me of a place in Orlando where in the 1950s was built. It's called Griffin Park. It's a federal housing division, and it was built. If you look at it, there's highways, very populated highways all around it. And so growing up, these kids had to grow up and breathing pollution and noise pollution and all kinds of other things that could definitely affect them. So thankfully with the city of Orlando, they are actually doing something about this right now. And so there's change being made with that. But the population that you work with, IDDs, individuals with developmental disabilities, they're often overlooked really in general. But doesn't it even seem to be something that's most correlated with climate justice? So can you tell us about the people your organization serves? Why are they truly the most vulnerable to climate change? Or how does climate change affect persons with disabilities?
Absolutely, absolutely. So 25.9% of individuals with disabilities are considered poor or low income. And we all know what happens in poor, underserved neighborhoods especially when natural disasters hit. They are forgotten, they are overlooked, they are left behind, things are inaccessible, they are not included in the planning and the preparedness for any emergency evacuations. And so, it's the intersectionality of, being low income, having a disability, and then you add other intersectionalities to that. It's just so extremely important that we are, again, including them in the conversation around these evacuation plans, around emergency preparedness, and making sure that they too have a voice.
It was actually at this conference last year that I put the two together with disabilities, and it was actually a volunteer with CCL, with Citizens Climate Lobby, who was here in a wheelchair, had spina bifida, and he said to me, I'm the most affected by climate change. If a hurricane comes, I need someone to help me. I am not able to get myself out of there. You think about people that need medication, or they have a breathing ventilator, or they're really impacted by climate change and truly the most vulnerable.
I dropped a link in the Hova app. And I encourage everyone to check it out, but it's about adaptation strategies as it's related to climate change. And something that an individual in that video said that I thought was so extremely important is when natural disaster occurs and we're all running to get out of there, and he's doing the best to will himself out of there, and we're running past them, leaving them behind to sometimes die, right? So it's just such an important topic, and it's so impactful to the disability community, and I think there's so many opportunities for us to do better simply by including them in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to skip a bunch of questions that I had that were so good, and this is such a good panel. But I just want to end it by saying that our voices are so important to let our leaders know what is important to us, and we want to build a safe and inclusive world for all. So thank you to our panelists for.
And can I do a call to action?
Call to action.
Just a call to action. One of the things when we do these, we're always preaching to the choir, right? You guys are here because you care. And I think, like I shared earlier, my personal goal is to never talk to someone in the foundation world without helping them understand how they should be thinking about this. And I also would just challenge you all out there who are advocates and doing good work. Don't assume that people make the connection. And reach out across the communities, the disabled communities, the Black communities, the farm workers community. I mean, there's so many communities. And make sure that the people running those programs and funding those programs understand the connection to climate. We need to get more people into this room.
So to end this, maybe you guys can all help me. This is a Best Buddies shirt. It says inclusion lives here. Do you want to, on the count of 3, inclusion lives here? 1, 2, 3. Inclusion lives here. It's a big voice. We can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you.